because I have a fire burning in my belly. A fire that was lit a long time ago in all these different moves that I did. And a fire that was lit because I saw, I observed, and I experienced what it's like to be a little girl child, a teen girl, a young woman, and then a professional woman who traveled and worked and studied across 4 continents. That's the fire in my belly. Now, when I was a little one and we moved, to a new place every couple of years, the first place that I'd look for is where they'd give out free books. Sometimes these were beautiful libraries with wood paneling, with friendly librarians, and that old-fashioned cataloging system. Other times, all I'd find was an old forgotten room full of books. Then there were times that all I had in that town or that school was a dusty shelf in a musty corner somewhere with books that had been forgotten, thrown away, donated by travelers and tourists and expats who'd already moved on to their next destination. But I found treasures in these dusty shelves. I discovered I, Robo from Isaac Asimov. I read The Black Tulip from Alexander Dumas. I discovered Charles Dickens. I discovered Robinson Crusoe. I even read Shakespeare. Now, I don't profess to having understood everything that I read as a child, but I'll tell you this, I read every single word. My love for reading gave me an insatiable curiosity that when I traveled to a new place, I wasn't just this passive observer moving from place to place. I questioned everything. My novels tell stories. They tell stories of girls around the world, and these girls, they stand up, they speak up against age-old customs, old traditions that keep them down and treat them as second class. And I can tell you, I've seen that again and again and again. But my girls, my protagonists, they rise up. They rise from the slums of India, and they rise from the brothels of Europe. And my girls, they rise from the refugee camps of Africa, and they win the day. But I have one extra page in the back, and the title is, "The Truth is Harsher Than Any Fiction That I Can Summon Up Any Gumption to Write." The truth is harsher than fiction. These are facts and studies done by reputable organizations all the way from the World Health Organization to the World Trade Organization, all the way from the International Labor Organization to UNICEF and all these other really reputable studies that are done around the world, as well as the McKinsey Institute, the big consulting firm. And so I share that because I want people to know that that little girl that you've been following, that half Indian girl who's fallen in love with the wrong guy and done this and made mistakes, but then she goes off to win the day. There are millions of girls like that. There are actually hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of girls like that. Whichever way you slice and dice these numbers, you want to turn them upside down and inside out and carve them whichever way you want, they paint a petrifying picture of the state of girls and young women around the world. That amounts to around 1 billion women who are going through things that perhaps is unimaginable to most of us. These girls, these young women, most of them are silenced, perhaps brutally so. Some of them are self-silenced. They've decided it's their lot in life. And then there are others who, instead of picking up the gun, like those young men would do, they decide to pick up a pen. Or they decide to either instead of lobbying a grenade, they decide to sing a song. Sonita, she was 15 years old, and she was sitting in her home next to the kitchen, and she overheard her parents talking with relatives, trying to figure out how much they would get to sell her off to the man in the next village so they could make enough money to pay for her brother's wedding. The fact that she was a piece of furniture to be sold off to someone else, that had been established long time ago. They were just haggling over the price. Sunitha decided to write a story, a poem, and then sing it in her own language, Dari, and then she even went ahead and recorded it. All of these things by a little girl in Afghanistan was not a very safe thing to do, but she did it anyway. May I share with you a study done by the South Asian Legal Clinic of Ontario a few years ago. The research scientists, they called it a groundbreaking study. I call it a bone-chilling study. A third of them were 12 to 18. These are girls, 92% of them were girls who are sent across to another country to get married to somebody they have never even met, usually 10, 20, 30 years older than them. And usually it's to men who want a visa. They're just sold off for a visa. How can you continue the practice and look at yourself in the mirror the next morning? Now I know what you can't see on top, two words, duty and honor. Honor, the most twisted word in the English language at the moment. What honor is there when you tell your girl who's battered and bruised in the hospital that no, it's to save our honor that you go back to the man who hit you? And then tell the doctors and nurses, no, 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 don't interfere with our culture, with our traditions, because no, we don't want you to say anything, and of course everybody looks the other way. Jasvinder Sangera goes around talking about her sister as well as her own experiences, and she says, cultural acceptance does not mean accepting human rights violations, does not mean accepting trotting on another human being's dignity. I wanted to share with you a whole slew of how girls changing this conversation around would help not just our economy, our environment, our health system, and I'm speaking global, from a global perspective. I have hope. I have hope because when I grew up, I saw this. No, let's not look at that. No, that's not happening. Tikiri, stop talking about it. Stop asking questions. Stop trying to dissect these things and analyze these things and talk to other people about it. It didn't happen. It's the way it's always been. It's just a culture, it's a tradition, it's a religion. These are all crutches, poor excuses for horrifying abuse of power. Now, you know Malala, she didn't become an activist the day she got shot. She was an activist because she spoke up about girls' education on stealth radio for a couple of years before they decided to shoot her. And it's a reason they targeted her. What a brave young girl. We have Dr. Sunitha Krishnan. She saves girls from brothels. And Kekanya from Kenya, I'm not pronouncing that name right, she negotiated with her father. She said, fine, you want me to go through female genital mutilation? It's a tradition, fine, I'll get cut, but don't sell me off after that. The promise is you let me finish school. So she negotiated her way, as horrifying as it is. She negotiated her way out. I have a lot of hope for the future because these girls and these young women are standing up and speaking up, just like the protagonists in my books. And they don't look away, they don't just sit there, and they don't just fight for girls' issues, they become astronauts, for heaven's sake. And it's not just the women. We have some men who are compassionate, and so this gives me hope, a ton of hope. But I'm going to finish now by saying that none of this would be possible if it wasn't for those who had walked the path in front of us, so that we can go to school, so that we can get the jobs we want and find the freedom that we seek and do the work that we love to do, and sit here and have the freedom of expression to speak our mind. And so for that, I cannot thank you enough.